Right?
Jaya Jaya Yesu, Jaya Jaya Krishna.
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 Jaya Jaya Yesu, Jaya Jaya Yesu.
Jaya Jaya Yesu, Jaya Jaya Yesu.
Jaya Jaya Krishna, Jaya Jaya Krishna.
Jaya Jaya Krishna, Jaya Jaya Krishna.
Jaya Jaya Yesu, Jaya Jaya Krishna.
Jaya Jaya Yesu, Jaya Jaya Krishna.
Jaya Jaya Yesu, Jaya Jaya Krishna.
Jaya Yesu, Jaya Jaya Krishna. Thank you, Marcos. Thank you, Chetan and Daniela. Thank you. So, we have Father Anthony up now. Father Antony Kalliath is a Carmelite priest. He did his doctorate at the Gregorian University in Rome and did his dissertation on Swami Abhishektananda. Father has, for those of you who were here in 2010 conference, Father gave a beautiful talk called the Christic Wheel. That was in January 2010. And today's talk will be called Bridge Consciousness. Father he served as Dean of Theology at a seminary in Bangalore for a time. He's been on faculty at the NBC LC. He's, I think, currently president of the Indian Theological Association. Can we say it like that?
I'm not no.
Good. Okay, good. That Kairos is starting to, yeah, good. And he's let's see, give me a second. Oh, closer. Okay, sorry. Yeah. So president of the Indian Theological Association, and presently, you're based in Coimbatore now, Father, right? Yeah? Oh, Bangalore, okay. So, Father, I think this probably is since we last saw you here in 2010, you authored the book called Word in the Cave, is that right? Yeah, what year was that, would you say?
94.
Oh, okay, so it's an older book, okay. And then numerous articles, you can find these online. And part of what the talk that we'll hear today, at least a version of that, is presented in the Dilla Kapil Korde, which Father submitted for publication this summer. That's the DIM publication online. But we'll have a video screen of some of the pages of the talk. So without further ado, let's welcome Father Antony Kalliath. And yeah, and let's honor you with our song. Yeah, good. Raise the image. I'm a little leery of doing that. Let's see. This projector, you like it up a little bit? Is there a leg there? It's a good leg. How's that? Father, do you want us to turn so you can read? No. You okay?
My dear brothers and sisters, it's a happy moment for me to speak something on Abhishektananda. At the outset, I would like to thank Father Daroti Raj for inviting me to present this paper. It's always a pleasure for me to come to Shantivanam because Shantivanam has been always a critical, has been playing a critical role in my formation, especially in my theological studies. I did my licentiate on Father B. Griffiths, and then I did my doctorate on Vishiddhananda. So actually, I'm deeply connected to this wonderful holy place. For me, it brings me a lot of memories. I haven't seen Vishiddhananda personally, but I have seen and talked a lot with the Father B. Griffiths. So it's always a pleasure for me to be here. Thank you very much for inviting me there. Okay, so for your wonderful introduction. Let me straight away enter into this topic. Usually, when I speak something on Hindu theology or something like that, one of the mantras which we always recite, I also recite. This is the mantra. It is with this mantra I start every day personally. Oh, Purnamada, Purnamada. In my own way, let me say, it gives me a lot of energy. Once I presented a paper in Italian on Abhishek and Sannyasa topic in Florence. Then I sang this. People were so much taken up and they wanted. So it is beyond language. That I think so. Purnamadaha Purnamidam Purnat Purnamudachyate Purnasya Purnamadaya Purnameva Vishishyate. Om Shanti Shanti Shanti. So I will be giving a synopsis here so that you may follow the track. I have already this paper, this subject I have already treated and published also a small one. Now it has become long. It comes up to 16 pages. It's a big article like thing. The other one you can get it online. The cyber media you get it. But I have treated the whole topic in a little more wider and deeper way, expand and enhance the whole idea of rich consciousness. This is a happy coincidence that your topic is also something on bridge. This is possible. So, bridge consciousness, Abhishekdananda's Tao of being missionary. That's the topic. Let me explain a little bit immediately. What I mean by this title. So, bridge consciousness as a missional witness summarizes Abhishekdananda's Odyssey into India. It is his discovery as a missional witness. You have to become bridge. I got this idea, I figured out this caption, bridge consciousness, as his Christian faith evolved into interfaith in his narrative. He elaborates this double loyalty in a dialectic logic. He himself says, it is precisely this being torn apart between Advaita and Christianity which enables me to live the fundamental experience and express its mystery to some extent. In one of his letters, he elaborates this complexity of this double belonging. It is precisely the fact of being a bridge that makes this uncomfortable situation worthwhile. The world at every level needs such bridges. However, the danger of this life as a bridge is that we run the risk of not belonging finally to either side. Whereas, however harrowing it may be, our duty is precisely to belong holy to both sides. This is how he describes the whole thing, It's on witness. My presentation would be on the relevance of Swamiji's missional as being a bridge in the present globalized and media world of multiple belonging and the intricacies of a religiousness which is inclusive, dialogical, and non-conclusive. I already mentioned in the discussion about the Krishna Bhakta. This is a double belonging, multiple belonging is a kind of normal phenomenon in our Indian situation. For example, these Krishna Bhaktas, they belong to Jesus Christ. They claim that they are devotees of Jesus, but at the same time, they are Hindus by dharma, by religion. How to understand from our Christian perspective? That's a big problem. Abhishnanda has to an extent explained and lived that double belonging in his own personal level. Not only Krishna Bhaktas, we have so many other leaders from Hindu thought having this kind of double belonging. For example, when great leaders like Mahatma Gandhi, Vivekananda, Ramakrishna Paramahamsa, great disciples of Jesus. Ramakrishna Paramahamsa used to say that he used to have some kind of mystical encounter with Jesus Christ. Then Vivekananda once said that if Jesus were alive here, I would not wash his feet with the tears, but with my heart blood. So that kind of relationship and intimacy they have. How do they connect to two religions together? This is not only at the high level, also in the popular level. Also, we know that Kevalangandi Mada, that church and various churches, people belonging to different religions go and pray to Jesus, etc. I have one small little powerful experience. Maybe simplistic for you, but for me it was a great encounter. No, it's small little one. No, but once I was little sick and I went to one of the dispensaries in Coimbatore, so Then doctor prescribed, I should get an injection. So I went to that room where they take an injection. Then I was lying on the bed. Then a Tamil nurse, a young girl came there, and she knew that I was a priest. And she was taking the syringe and the medicine, and she was laughing, Father, it's with a lot of joy and passion, and I don't understand. She was just exploding because she saw me, and she articulated this way, Father, I am a fan of Jesus. I am a fan of Jesus. That statement has got a deeper meaning in Tamil culture, no? Here people immolate themselves for their leaders, no? I am a fan of Jesus. Jesus never failed in my life. Whenever I say church, I'm quoting her words. I have already, wrote this episode in many of my articles, and she said that whenever I go to the church and I pray to Jesus Christ, he blesses me and he encourages me, he gives me everything what I need. I don't know the passion, the interest in this. She's evangelizing me. When I look back into my own life, I was teaching theology for 3 decades plus. No? I was never taught to communicate with Jesus with this kind of passion. Honestly speaking. From that moment onwards, I begin to take Jesus as my guru or something. Maybe strange, but I was evangelized by a Hindu girl, honestly speaking. So, but she is a Hindu. She's a Hindu. But look at the double belonging. This is a kind of common phenomenon what we find in Indian situation. And Abhishikananda is an icon of this for us, how to go about it. But we'll try to explain and justify this kind of double belonging. The church is in a confusion how to accommodate these people. Thousands and thousands of Krishna Bhaktas are there in UP. So we have our own way of looking at things. We construct our identity through a epistemic of exclusion rather than inclusion. You see, it is mind-boggling for the church to conceive such multiple belonging as we are trained in Aristotelian philosophy of either or. Church struggles to explain this religious phenomenon of double belonging that we find in the Christian Bhaktas through a doctrine of baptism by desire. A person can attain the grace of justification through faith, contrition, and the desire of baptism without baptismal water. This is how we explain. They are members of the church out of desire. No? Such a stance of the church seems to me self-referential and an attempt to justify its absolutist position rather than trying to interpret the faith of the non-Christian in Jesus from the followers of other pursuits and enhance the bandwidth of a Christology unknown to the church. It is ridiculous to claim that the church has exhausted the witness of Christ. There is still an unknown Christ or even an unknowable Christ in the church. At the same time, we can discern a known Christ among Hindus and Muslims and even atheists. Atheist means, for example, our Chief Minister in Kerala, Achyutanandan, once uttered in the assembly, I am a communist, but always I look at Jesus Christ whenever I find myself nowhere. No? He publicly stated, no, he is a communist. So Jesus is everywhere, ubiquitous, he is accepted as a guru. Somehow he is influencing Indian people. So the multiple belonging to religious pursuits in the present diaspora or liminal space is increasingly becoming a new religiousness of tolerance, pluralistic values, and experiential wisdom, especially among the new gen of brave new world, among the youngsters. I find it in a wonderful way. It is precisely in this context that the narrative of Abhishektananda is critical referral, because his missional witness is on the domain of interfaith religiousness and multiple belongingness. So I just here the importance of Abhishektananda is that of a pathfinder. Today people find themselves straddling cultural, social, and even religious fault lines, frantically searching for convincing models as they try to find their way through uncharted religious pursuits. There is seemingly a varied plethora of religious ways in vogue, be it yoga, Zen, earth spirituality, quantum consciousness, wellness spirituality, inner balance, inner engineering, art of living, mindfulness, heartfulness, pranic, etc., cosmic intelligence, or cosmic consciousness, varieties of religious ways we find. And which is the best? They are large, but when we look deep into all these new spiritualities, I find they are more psychological and they are individualistic, technical, rather than of a true religiousness as we find in the vision, the practice of Jesus. However, the variant religious pathways are the very claim of the cultural ethos of pluralism in the present epoch, especially in the context that the credibility of the mainstream religions is interrogated on the public domains. In such turn of events, it looks natural that one must have a personalized art of living, especially in a world of multiple choices and multiple belonging to religious pursuits in the present eros and pathos, because pluralism is irretrievably the very text and text of the present globalized post-culturalist scenario, a frontierless and digitized world. There exists a considerable fluidity and unpredictability in all domains of life. Exclusive ideologies are interrogated or rather no more palatable in the present epoch of immediate access to the interdisciplinary informatics, artificial intelligence, general artificial intelligence, virtual reality, and the global online markets of enormous variegated pursuits that suit the experimental and exploratory mindset of the new gen. We are entering a cultural ethos in which virtuality is turning into reality. We spend more time on internet and Facebook than on real world. People find themselves in borderline situation. That is the important thing, where the interaction of various religious pursuits and values engenders a cultural and religious kaleidoscopic choices and options, though they seem chaotic and ambivalent from the customary point of view. Even though this confluence of cultural, informational, and spiritual values may cause confusion on the one hand, it is also enchanting and adventurous on the other hand, for it is an inexhaustible opportune domain to set oneself free from set patterns and the macro narratives in which the new gen is indoctrinated or catechized. So this hastiness prevailing in the liminal spaces, that space of broad borderline spaces of the globalized world, might not be catastrophic, but would only be temporary phenomenon. Though the frontier line confluence of ideas, experimentations, and unconventional practices look chaotic, it must be an in-source and a novel fabric for a new genesis towards a cosmos of harmony and synergy in due course of time. Heidegger would say the boundary does not stop, but is that from which something begins its presencing. So the boundaries, borderlines, liminal spaces have become centers.
Become what?
Centers. No more they become centers. Formerly they were boundaries now. So frontiers turning into cosmos to centers. Elaborating further, in today's world, peripheries are evolving as third spaces of mutual appropriations, as the so-called centers of macro narratives are dissipated in postmodern non-essentialist world. Frontiers are largely replacing the centers. Today's adventure is not crossing the boundaries, but being right at them, absorbing and integrating divergent and pluralistic text and texture of the frontier cultural scape and narratives, which are expanding in an exponential way. Dialogue, diversity, and democracy spin out as the practice and text of the culture of tolerance and reverence, the unconditioned recognition of the other and their claims and their dignity in these indeterminate borderline encounters and mutual exposures is compelling in these liminal spaces. Though a sense of unpredictability and directionlessness in the thick of multiple options has become the new normal, it is silently welcomed, for it offers immense freedom to think and live differently. Members of the present generation resist polar binaries. Rather, they seek a middle path, a taboo, to bring together and harmonize the ambivalences of the present multi-layered, multilinear scenarios. They seem to prefer ambiguity and vulnerability to absolutes and certainties, for the former embody immense scope and scape to experiment and explore new possibilities and the hidden promises in the present ethos of informatics and cultural exposures without being constrained by normative religious teachings and social theories. In the present era of creativity and innovation, they prefer an experiential coherence of ambivalence. I put that way. An experiential coherence of ambivalence. They indulge in the muddy middle rather than being constrained by the polar identities. It is more an art of living amidst multiple choices and of belonging to multiple preferences than a life of exclusive and suffocating canons, customs, and creed. It is more an Asian way of harmony and complementarity than the Occidental logistics of either or. Precisely here comes the importance of Abhishektananda. He is an icon, he is a model, an ideal, how to bring various streams of religious practice together in one's own God realization, self-realization. That's how I put it as a Tao of modern religiousness.
Yeah.
So when we think about this, we are going to think about the faith, interfaith hermeneutics. It's very critical in this context. In this process, what is needed is a hermeneutics of inter-multiculturalization that may not necessarily lead to a third option, discrediting or one's identity. A hermeneutic of this kind implies a long gestated cultural consciousness in which one stands firmly on one's own shore of beliefs and faith, but is at the same time bridged to the belief systems and philosophies of others in a creative, inclusive epistemics. That's what we find in the Vishitananda. Such a stream of consciousness detects absolutes and prefers processional truth amid daily struggles in a multicultural and religious context. What is in gestation is a silent but a sure shift from the exhaustive insight of each tradition to an enthralling intersight or multi-site incorporated into their already peculiar heritages. It looks as an antithesis of Aristotelian principle of non-contradiction. But the pluralistic ethos is more of Asian hermeneutics of Anegavada. Truth is manifested manifoldly. It is of Asian secularism, which upholds federated identity in which the epistemic of continuum or simultaneity are operative, as in the network which has neither circumference nor center. It is a relational as well as a provisional absolute vision and experience beyond all dualities. It has indeed a deeper referral that transcends phenomenal world. It is the constant in the transient and fleeting phenomenal world. Abhishtanda calls that referral as depth, the interior witness. It is the consequential of the depth through which one can discern a similar experience of the other with utmost respect and reverence. It is a movement between the ultimacy and universality of religious experience of the diverse seekers. Thereby, the uniqueness of a religious experience in a particular tradition is not constructed over against the other, but in a correlational and co-efficient discernment of the unicity of other religious experience on the realm of mutual empowerment and enhancement effortlessly. It is more existential and realizational than conceptual and syllogistic. Such a discernment and appreciation at the depth can never be engineered by an agent Ubadi, but external agent, but spontaneously and irresistibly happens as one indulges in inward musings towards the interiority of being. Obviously, an ineffable harmony happens generally in the heightened and enlightened consciousness. It can be called Buddha consciousness or Christ consciousness of a new light and a new life. In similar terms, it is more of consciousness. The eternal constant within us beyond all change and names and forms. It is sui generis. It is not the ratio of Descartes, which is invariably under the spell and sway of the sensual world, but the eternal. The consciousness is the eternal witness, is eternal. It is a eternal witnessing consciousness at the interior process of our subjectivity. It is Siddha Prajna, Bhagavad Gita would say, changeless center of the changing world. So consciousness is the constant in our life. We have three faculties to live out: body and mind and consciousness. Body and mind are always undergoing changes. Reason also, it is full of memories. Without memory, we cannot work out. We cannot think. The body is undergoing change. But there is an eternal constant, that is consciousness. The faculty of consciousness is witnessing. So we have to bring our religiousness to this level. Abhishektananda calls this consciousness at the depth. So to see everything through the depth, then we have a new interpretation, new way of understanding, new way of experiencing. Surprisingly, today's quantum theories substantiate that the manifest world is deeply scripted, engineered, and choreographed by an unmanifest quantum consciousness. They call it depth. The inclusive identity of the whole existence is explained in terms of quantum coherence, in which the whole reality is entangled in a quantum field as a whole and is experienced on the domain of quantum consciousness, which is non-local at the subatomic stratum. So the depth could be a metaphor of quantum in today's conversation. It is the ineffable and infinite synergy of information energy. It is the quantum consciousness where organism and environment co-evolve as a unified process. Asian wisdom traditions would say it is Sat Chit Ananda, being, consciousness, and bliss. Thus, the mystery of existence is explained. Existence, awareness of existence, the bliss that comes from mutual exchange between the former ones are the summary of everything that is sustained by the quantum mechanics. So Sachidananda can be a metaphor of quantum, or rather the other way. Quantum mechanics, quantum theory could be another metaphor for Sachidananda, which we always recite. So moreover, the transpersonal, transcendental, immanent consciousness, the fabric of ever-inclusive and open-ended synergetic relationship is to be sought, nurtured, and lived out in the present pluralist scenario. It is not something to be accomplished in Himalayas or deserts, but right in the public space. The present informatic ethos and eros begin to entertain the world of virtual reality, which is becoming more real than the real in the present computing world, especially when artificial intelligence and emerging artificial general intelligence will sway humankind's freedom and autonomy in the years to come. That is the middle path, which absorbs and transforms the paradoxes, binaries, and provides coincidences and juxtapositions to polar identity constructs. It can simultaneously function as a fulcrum and flux of the ever vulnerable existential, which unfolds in a wisdom of uncertainty and engenders new configurations of ideas and novel coalitions of friendliness and partnerships on a day-to-day basis. A pathway rooted in the faculty of the awakened consciousness seems to be the only comprehensive path, policy, and solution to take on the anarchy and the mistrust unleashed by the present worldwide polarized politics connived through religious identities. Here comes the importance of Abhishektananda. The advocacy of Abhishektananda. So I put the advocacy of Abhishektananda in this wider context. Anyway, advocacy of Abhishektananda on inward transcendence or in sentence, I put it. This is one of the crucial things. No? For Abhishektananda, the inclusive and pluralist religiousness of multiple belonging is of a bridge consciousness at the depth of the being. It is a consciousness of plurality in unity rather than of unity in plurality. It is the harmony of life built up and sustained in a network of synergic partnership of juxtaposition with other religious pursuits attained through reverence, mutual perceptions, and reconceptions of one's own identity, all of which leads to mutual transformation and empowerment. Abhishektananda insists that this consciousness is to be achieved first and foremost at the depth of the being. The book of wisdom also says in this line that this ground is the divine witness of the inmost feelings and the true observer of the heart and hearer. Wisdom 167. In the same vein of using, Isha Upanishad would figure out a seer as the one who sees all things in own self and own self in all things. It implies that the interior depth will then effortlessly bring over into the cultural life, religious values, political options, etc. Such an outcome is dependent on being grounded in one's own inner core, the depth, the constant of one's life narrative, for to all acculturation and inculturations in one's lifespan. Indeed, it implies deconstruction of one's own existing complex religious and ethnic certainties constructed through socialization, religious catechism. Obviously, it also empowers the seeker a voluntary embrace of vulnerability and a proactive indulgence in the wisdom of uncertainty. What is inherent in this process is an indomitable adventure into the inner space, which, as patristic fathers, mystics like Clement of Alexandria would say, it is inner space is larger than outer space. Mystical traditions would say we carry inside us the wonders we seek outside. If the inner war is so the fundamental conviction that Abhishektananda discerns through his artist's experiment with Advaita is that awakening to self implies and entails a spontaneous and simultaneous awakenings to God, to our brothers and sisters, and to the whole creation, to God, humankind, and the creation. These spontaneous awakenings that arise in one's pursuit of the divine in the deepest recesses of oneself are the crux and the core of Abhishektananda's way and witness of life. His mentor, Ramana Maharshi, used to say, "Be the water, not the froth, that is done by diving in." Why should one dread the depth? In the turbulent waters of religious pluralism, the net must be cast into the deep for a good catch. That's how Abhishektananda is. Awakening at Guhandra, again, further enhancing this idea. In Abhishektananda's terminology, the depth of being is Guhandra, ground of being, Guhaja, the matrix of life. Ramana Maharshi, the guru of Abhishektananda, would say that it is Hridaya Gruha, that means the cave of the heart. The beyondness of this ever enthralling and ever inducing Guhaja is the heart of existence, which we can call God, Mother, Abba, Brahman, Being, Trinity, Sachidananda, etc. It is a source from which everything evolves and into which everything involutes, like the spider projects forth and draws back its thread. Mundaka Upanishad says so. Brihadaranyaka Upanishad would say, God is the Tajallan, from whom everything evolves, everything is sustained by him or her, and finally everything is resolved in him or her. So God is invariably in this process incarnational. So incarnation that happened according to is not mere a historical event once and forever. Incarnation is an ever happening existential of the order of life, since being ever in the mode of recreation is the inner life of the being. The core of being is the ontological vulnerability of becoming. I am who I am, or I am who I become. Exodus 3:14. Meister Eckhart's dialectic of Ixitus Reditus interprets the ever-becoming nature of being. I am who I am. The repetition twice indicates a turning of being in itself and yet being fixed. Yet it indicates also such a boiling, Burizio, he says, a boiling up and pouring out of itself and bubbling to us itself, light penetrating light itself, for penetrating the whole self. So the whole being, is always in a becoming process. It's not a it's not an isolated, immutable monad out there. It is always ever creating, ever evolving. It's a process. Unlike Thomism, such postulates as immutable God, immutability is regarded as holiness. No, the Godhead is always ever processual and engaging abyss and bustle at the depth of existence. The manifest world is only a microscopic speck of the mammoth gush and flow of the unmanifest realm. Even in quantum theories, they say that the vast universe, multiverse, billions and billions of galaxies and planets, etc., etc. So it's a huge existence we have, and the manifested world. This manifested world is only 0.5%. According to science, 99% plus 0.5% is unmanifest. So unmanifest is more important than the manifest. If you want to understand this manifest, we have to go through unmanifest. This unmanifest is the depth, according to Abhishitanda's language. So Swamiji employs both Guhandra and human beings as a microcosm can intuit this enormous creative flurry of the existence at the depth of their being, Guhandra, by adhering to a profound path of awareness and becoming a Sakshi, right being there. Thereby one discerns the vital and vivacious connect to the whole of reality. In this regard, Swamiji was totally committed to the way of Ramana Maharshi, who taught that it is through Atma Vijaya, self-inquiry, that one can reach this Advaita core in communion, the whole existence. Mundaga Upanishad offers this way of understanding Guhandra. It is a fulgent, near at hand, and well known as moving in the heart, Guhajarin, and it is the great God. On it are fixed all these that move, breathe, and wink, and will not wink. No, this one, which comprises the gross and the subtle, which is beyond the ordinary knowledge of creatures, and which is the most desirable and the highest of all. So the beautiful explanation of the depth, So the depth is the threshold. It's a way, to know the whole reality. So Swamiji employs both Guhandra and Guhaja intermittently in his writings. Indeed, Guhandra is the title of his magnum opus. It was published soon, I think so. Guhaja denotes depth or womb, wherein life sprouts, wherein the source of life. It is innate and immediate and is accessible without mediation. Just awaken to it. It is a pathless path, and this inward transcendence is of passive activity. It is simply witnessing. One needs not to believe, but it is already right there, and what is needed, just see it on the spectrum of awareness without any mediation or mediator. It is there, already there. The biblical equivalent of Guhaja could be the kingdom of God within, or the living water, or the hope of glory of the risen right in the interiority, Colossians chapter 1:27. When Jesus says, become the light, you are already the light, become the light. It's like the fire and the fear, if I use the metaphors from Upanishad, or like the music in the strings. The source of all life abides at the depth of our being. We are already redeemed and graced by the incarnate. If at all to put in Christian vision, the depth is de facto the divine. Swamiji insists that this can only be lived out and celebrated by an inward musing towards the depth. The latent space of the Advaitic integrity and integration of existence, the mutual coherence of many and one. So one needs to turn within and tune within and become a light unto oneself. This simple thing, simply awaken to yourself. That's what Vishitananda, Buddha, and Jesus Christ, all the rishis say to us. In Christian translation, it could be explained as face-to-face incoherence of the finite and the infinite. It is like the ocean gushing in the drop when it drowns in the ocean to know its true oceanic nature. Though the drop seemingly drops its identity, it procures a unique character as it becomes the wave of the ocean. Its identity is not lost, but rather evolves into a new, self-fulfilling, heightened wavelength, so much so that it becomes the very ocean. Now, coming to the bridge consciousness. Swamiji characterizes his awakening of form as bridge consciousness in the depth, in which his faith becomes interfaith. As already mentioned, he claims, I simply find myself profoundly Hindu and Christian at the same time. He says to describe this double loyalty in a dialectic. It is precisely this being torn apart between Advaita and Christianity which enables me to live the fundamental experience and to express this mystery to some extent. The fundamental experience could be a profound mutuation or an inclusive and non-conclusive witness beyond all knowledge and human reasoning, or it could be a mystical subject referral at the interiority of his being, which is same as the very subjectivity of existence itself. Guhaja must involve intersubjectivity, thereby his double loyalty can be expressed through the metaphor of a bridge. While a bridge connects to river banks, the turbulence of human reasoning and in terms of concepts, cult, creed, namarupas flow underneath it, without frustrating the radical bridge communion at that depth. Swamiji being torn apart can be conceived as something brought about by a breakthrough, through a breakdown of namarupas of his Christian encarceration. The depth is like the divine dark, or the night of the intellect, so puts Dionysius. Such is the paradox of awakening. It is experiential and existential, beyond human constructs. It is knowing of knowing, the eye of the eye, the breath of the breath, the radical witness. It is a surrender without a subject or object, just pure karma that is justified in itself. An ecstatic and aesthetic synchronicity with the web of existence. This is how I look at it. So the depth is some very profound. Metaphorically, it is a correspondence of the art of living and art of dying. The decay of seed coincides with its sprouting. It's verily the very paradox of Godhead, in which God is simultaneously the Lord of life and the Lord of death. The cross spinning out a splash of new light. The empty tomb becomes a poignant symbol of womb of new life. A logical mind can never ever enter in such paradoxical dialectic. As mentioned earlier, it is through an unqualified surrender that humans can enter the orbit of the divine prudential. In a similar stream of musing, Buddhist void from which everything evolves and in which everything involutes is abundance of all potentials, possibilities and promises. This void is the unmanifest, the mother of the manifest. It is the depth in which origin and destiny coexist and giving birth to life. It is right there at the depth of a being. It is immediate, intimate, and accessible without mediation. Turn within, tune within, and become the light of the world. Atmo Divo Bhava, utters Buddha on his deathbed to his disciple Ananda. Swamiji opted to live out this tension, being bridge, in an interfaith contest. He was convinced that the bridge experience should be prolonged in the story of his life as well as that of the church. If a theological synthesis is proactively figured out of this bridge experience in the collective consciousness of the Church of India, it will enhance and deepen the sense of fidelity, so that the Christian life can be articulated and witnessed more authentically and genuinely in the interfaith liminal space. That is Vishitanda's position. It should be propagated. It should be enhanced and bring it down to the people's level. The flesh and blood of the risen, incarnate in India and Asia, is verily the vibrant narrative of interfaith juxtapositions of myriad hues and hues, be the political policies or social priorities or cultural perspectives or the happenstance of religious faiths in the miscellany of the Asian struggles, especially of the people at the margins. Bridge consciousness as the middle path between the binaries of religious pursuits is an Asian articulation or imagination of vicarious wisdom enshrined in the second kenosis of celebrated on the cross by the Word incarnate. To put it that way. He also employs that word second kenosis. Second kenosis on the cross. That second kenosis is possible only when we enter into our depth level. Christian life and witness engineered on the spectrum of bridge consciousness at the depth will turn out a new narrative, potential promise for the gospel in the Church of Asia and in the Church at large. It must primarily happen in the autobiographies of the disciples of Jesus, and eventually it will trickle down to the sensus fidei people at large. It would be an revolutionary process, and it must happen on the greater integrity and integration of people at large. So was the narrative of the early church. The apostles wrote and preached the gospel because they witnessed Jesus, the risen, first in the narratives of their life. It was first and foremost autobiographical. Such an encounter with the risen challenged them to open up the doors, shut doors of the upper room, and dare to come out and begin to preach the gospel. They could not but proclaim and witness the gospel, for they had an existential encounter with the Spirit of the risen. The same narrative is taken place in stories of the disciples and devotees of Christ in Asia. As St. Paul says, the hope of God's glory, the Christ, is hidden in the inner recesses of our being. Such an autobiographical and existential encounter should primarily take place at the depth. Among the followers of Jesus in Asia as well as in the Church of Asia, before we encounter or venture to proclaim the witness of Jesus. In this case, Abhishitananda is veritable narrative. So this encounter to the depth firstly happened in his autobiography, in his own personal narrative. Such kind of happening should happen widely and slowly and steadily. That experience will trickle down to the whole of the church. That is his ambition, is his hope. Being a bearer and witness of this seamless border experience seems to be Abhishitananda's missional vocation. For him, the frontier between Christianity and Advaita is not to be marked by conflict and apologetics, but rather by harmony and mutual appropriation of two fundamental experiences of humanity. Becoming a bridge in his very being was how he wanted to embody this harmony. Raymond Panikkar writes, Swamiji's importance and weight lies not in his ideas but in his being. In an interfaith context, the depth consciousness is the bridge consciousness of tolerance, dialogue, reverence, and acceptance of other in his or her own ingenuity, dignity, identity. Such a dialogue evolves into synchronicity embedded in the eternal flow of existence that has no beginning nor end. In sum, according to Abhishitananda, bridge consciousness, which is the very substance and style and grammar of interfaith, multi-faith dialogue, is the vital space in which harmony and creative equity of religious pursuits can be achieved. Bridge consciousness is indeed an inclusive space sui generis, with it, which religions in dialogue should be willing to be interrogated as well as recognized. Through self-critique and the process of unlearning and of re-recognizing commonalities, mutual appropriations and empowerments can be realized effortlessly. This time, no?
Yes.
Let's stop it if you persist. So this is how I look at it, the last point I would say. The way and the wayfarer of and Vanguard. Abhishekanda interprets awakening, Saint Jyoti, in terms of God presence to himself. I am. He says, one can enter the presence in the mystery of self. He writes, this presence is entirely mine, founded in me, fixed in me, gushing out from the very depth of my presence to myself. According to him, all our attempts to understand God gush out from the fundamental witness, I am, Aham Asmi. The same was true of the self-understanding of Jesus, I am. We can therefore say that awakening to self turns itself into awakening to God in virtue of the very act itself in an effortless way. So self-realization becomes God realization. The path is different here in India. So from Christian point of view, we have self-realization through God realization. Here path is in the other way. It is through self-realization we have God realization. Rather, it is an interior face-to-face communion through which one simply becomes a witness, sakshi, a seer. Face-to-face, unmediated and immediacy is expressed in Advaitic intimacy. When one becomes a seer, then the seeker in him and the seeking and the sought will roll into one. Then you become that. Tatvamasi. There is an ineffable and effulgent coincidences of opposites, Nicholas says, on the spectrum of depth that is existential, experiential, and beyond all human constructs. So, succinctly, this Advaitic communion with the reality is simply the suchness that one surveys rightly and justly without cause or purpose. It is effortless wu wei from the Chinese point of view, non-wei, in an active passivity, a pure act of witnessing without a subject or an object. Moreover, in this communion, a mutual surrender takes place in which there is a mutual inflow of the infinite and the finite. This communion can be interpreted as the Trinitarian communion of life, in which coherence between the Father and Son brings over into the mutual communion energy that is the joy of the Holy Spirit. According to Advaita, this interior witness is Sat Chit Ananda. Anandam is the fullness, Purnam, which is not static, but it is possessive, of which the Upanishad muses, there is fullness, here is fullness comes from fullness, when fullness is taken away from the fullness, what remains is fullness. So this is a process, and it's always in a proceeding that way. It is not a kind of monolith monad out there, but God is a process. Thereby one finds oneself immersed in this fullness in which existence evolves and turns inward, is born and reborn again and again. In the realm of bridge consciousness at the depth, one cannot but sink with this eternal flow of existence. As Rumi says, you are not just a drop in the ocean, you are the entire ocean in a drop. A realized person will be in accord with this flow, Shakti, Chi, Tao, Maya, Ruha, whatever you say, and become a wave in the ocean of life. Then the awakened person is his or her domain of interior witness, sees everything in one's own self and one's own self in everything, Isha Upanishad. This is the radical experience of the communion of beings at the ground of being, which according to Abhishekanda should be at the core of any interfaith multifaith dialogue. To phrase it differently, dialogue will grow into a religious witness and celebration, interfaith at the realm of interfaith, an interfaith liturgy, I put it that way, witness. It becomes an interfaith liturgy at the realm of depth. This veritable interior compass is the missional third space where the gospel can genuinely take flesh and blood through an inclusive, often non-conclusive dialogue under the benediction of the Spirit, the witness of the truth. So, what is imperative in this sadhana of dialogues is utter obedience to the a posteriori revelations of the Spirit that transpire in the very process in which religions are engaged in conversation. Such a dialogue will never ever be apologetic and defensive, but of mutual empowerment and critiquing, and of an opportunity to unlearn and debug the jungle of set patterns and exclusive constructs and customs that mutilate and chop the true religiousness of the communion of being finished. Such an interfaith dialogue helps to discern the unknown in own religious tradition at the presence of the other, and both the partners will mysteriously be steered into the unknowable, in which both the traditions are fundamentally rooted and conceived. At that time of events, dialogue in virtue of itself spins out a competent and genuine religious practice in a multi-religious scenario. The very practice of dialogue churns out itself into an inclusive, non-conclusive religiousness, the depth which is sufficient unto itself. Thus, our own understanding of faith evolves into an existential and experiential interfaith, multi-faith experience of bridge consciousness, of universal harmony and communion of beings, of which Abhishekanda is, no doubt, the veritable, the way, the wayfarer, and mankind. Stop. I have some points for the discussion now, and we'll come next time. About 7 points, we can go through it and we can have some discussions on that.
Thank you, Father. Yes, we will. 3 o'clock, the 3 o'clock segment will be devoted to this talk. As you can hear, there's a whole lot there to unpack. We'll never get to all that. See, Father, that can be a book. Yes. You've got so many things there that to me are very interesting. But we would like